Hi, everyone. I'm Jan Mercer-Doms, Vice President of U.S. Development with Join Mayshad. We are an ecosystem of brands for women by women, connecting women to each other and to the companies, causes, and organizations that champion equity for women professionally and personally. You're here with us today watching Speak Your Mind with Dr. Risa Ryger, brought to you each and every Monday. Please, please, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check us out at joinmayshad.com and become part of how together we are revolutionizing how professional women connect, engage, and do business together. Hi, Risa. Happy Monday. Welcome.
Hi, Jen. Great to see you. It's always such a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thanks. Thank you so much, Risa. So, I can't wait to kick off today's show because I feel like as we're all moving into the late fall, winter months, something that comes up so much in conversation with women in our network is how do you present yourselves on stage in the new virtual world, which is obviously not going away anytime soon, but in a way that really exudes what you want to exude, no matter if it's confidence, joy, determination, seriousness, accomplishment, et cetera, et cetera. So can't wait to host you with you today, Risa, and welcome our special guest in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. So, Jen, one of the things that we do, and I'm thrilled to do this with you today. It's so great to have you here and welcome everyone. We're so happy that you're here as part of the sisterhood, Mayshad, and here with us in our show. So to start off, I'm going to talk about something positive that happened, and let's see how that resonates with you. So, Jen, get yourself ready to see how this resonates for you.
I'm ready. Okay. This is one of my favorite parts of your show because I never know what's going to come. This is always a surprise to us as well.
No, this is really the truth. I don't share it in advance. But over the weekend, I was sitting, and all of a sudden, I had this memory of something that I had done that I had completely forgotten about. So, and the memory was this, that several years back, I ran a group for Mothers Without Mothers. And so it was a group for women who had either lost their mothers, to death, or that they were no longer in contact with their mothers either because of some sort of situation that had occurred, or perhaps because of illness, Alzheimer's. There's all sorts of reasons that people do lose touch. And I had completely forgotten that I had done this. And so what it brought back to me is how sometimes we don't even remember our own accomplishments. Sometimes we have big ideas, we have goals, we're in the process, and it's so easy to forget what in fact we have done and have accomplished. So one of the things that I invite each and every one of you to do is to take a moment and to think about something that you've accomplished that perhaps is off your radar screen now. And that these are so important to remember because it also builds part of our confidence. And so instead of wondering, well, what can I do? That you also have a lot to go back to in terms of what I have done. And no matter where you are now, what you have done is an accomplishment. You really did it. And so hold on to that and add it to your arsenal of confidence boosters. Maybe when things get a little bit shaky for you, that you have your confidence arsenal to go back to. So, Jan, with that, I'm wondering if anything maybe sparks for you.
Well, Risa, of course. I think that this is so brilliant on so many different levels. First, because as we're approaching the end of 2020, we're all using this moment in time to step back and reflect upon what a crazy year it's been, number one. But number two, particularly for those of us, and as you know, Risa, our network is highly accomplished women in the corporate space, entrepreneurs, business owners, and honestly, also particularly perhaps as a result of COVID, many of us are also re-questioning our careers. And we know that, there have been millions and millions and millions of people, a lot of women that have been laid off and furloughed. And I think that, going through that exercise of what you just said is really interesting because it also enables us to take stock and take inventory to really discover what truly who we are and who do we want to be when we grow up, right? If there's something that we've accomplished that we may have been buried for whatever reason, I think it's really interesting to step back and reflect upon, the wonderful sum that makes us of the sum of all of our parts that makes us who we are today.
One of the things that I love about what you said, I know that you're feeling this, Jen, I just have no words for how wonderful she is. But one of the things that Jan just said is asking the question, what are we going to do when we grow up? And one of the reasons why I absolutely love that is because we are continually and hopefully so in the process of growing, that we're continually in the process of growth, that we are not done. We are not, kind of like, this is the show and let's wrap it up. That we always can have that next something, and it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be with fanfare, but in terms of our own growth and what we want to accomplish, both inside for ourselves, for perhaps for our careers, for our work, for our relationships, that there's always a growth edge, that there's always something. And that's where our vibrancy and our curiosity, our vibrancy and our liveliness also emerges from. So for whoever's watching, take that minute and don't just remember what you did, write it down and start to keep some sort of a document, a journal, a folder on your email list, wherever it is. Don't just leave it to stay in your head. Write it down so you have something to go back to. And once you remember that, you'll remember something else also. I know I did. I'm not talking about it today, but I know I did.
Risa, I think it's also really fascinating because, when we often think about, and women, like, we're very nonlinear, which is amazing because we can multitask, we listen to our intuition, we sometimes life takes us in a kind of a route like this as opposed to a straight line. But I think sometimes we also forget about who we were in our past, and we tend to identify with who we are today. And that's usually a job title or a specific role. And I think sometimes we do forget about, the seemingly immaterial things that we have accomplished, or even the more strategic macro things that we've accomplished. Like, that really truly leads us to who we are today. And honestly, the ways in which we're experienced and remembered by others too.
Shan, yes. I don't even know what to say to that other than yes. And that somehow, it gives us a moment to really ask ourselves, what is it that we value? How big does something have to be for us to put value to it? And can we find value with ourselves, in ourselves, every single day? Because even if I don't know your name and you're watching right now, I know for sure, absolutely, that every single day that you're bringing and giving value in some way, shape, or form. And it's really each of our internal commitment, not for anyone else, but for ourselves, in part of our wellness, in part of our self-care, that we find our value and acknowledge our value and give life and give value to our value, right? Every single day, in some way, shape, or form. Don't leave yourself behind. Don't. You don't have to. Bring yourself along. You're bringing everybody else along. You're bringing your list of groceries along. You're bringing that amazing new pizza oven that you could have at your house, along. If you're bringing all of that along, an immersion blender along, bring yourself along. Don't leave yourself behind. You don't need to. It doesn't make it better, and it doesn't mean that you're not taking care of everything else. You can take care of yourself too. Put yourself on notice to give value to you.
Risa, I think this is a perfect time to bring on our very special guest speaker for the day. And one of the reasons why this episode is so near and dear to my heart and so important is that I think, Risa, I absolutely agree with everything you're saying. And I would add to that the way in which we exude positivity in front of, I'm going to say, when we used to experience each other face to face, right, in the real world, the feeling you get when you're around other people that make you feel joyful and happy and content and safe and fulfilled. And yes, while it is harder to do all of that on the digital screen today, because we are all, a bit more or less than 3D. But there are definitely ways to do that in the sense of how you exude and how you want to show up and how you want to be perceived and remembered by others on the screen as well.
Yes, and that comes from, I mean, when you go on a screen, I remember when I did my first headshot, and I'd never done anything. I'd never done anything like that. And all of a sudden, there I was, and I had to communicate something about myself in stillness. And what a moment that was. And I want to talk, when we get the opportunity to talk about that with our fantastic guest, who we're so thrilled to have her here today.
So let's welcome Alyssa Peek to the stage. Welcome, Alyssa. Hi, good morning,
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. How are you? Lovely to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course, so good to see you. And we can't wait to start this conversation with you. Alyssa Peek is a virtual presence coach and a headshot photographer for women over the age of 40 and a fine art artist as well. Alyssa, I love so much about what you do. But I'm so interested if you could share the story about why you do what you do for women. Why is that really important to you?
Well, my goal, I always think that I'm successful at my job when I have more women in leadership. And so to get women in leadership, part of it is they need to see themselves first as a powerful person and leader, and then they need to show the world what that is. So I'm not about taking a pretty headshot of how beautiful you are. We get that also. But I really work with my clients to dig at what is it they want people to think about them? And more importantly, what are their goals? Because I don't want to take a picture of who you are now. I want to take a picture of who you want to be 5 years from now. So the best example of that is if you want to be CEO, you need to show up as the CEO. And let me capture that. And then people can envision you in that role. And so I really work and really dig down to who are you? Where'd you get to where you currently are? And I'm always on where are you going next? Who are you still becoming? And what you were saying, Risa, it's at any age, right? So we bring all these things with us. And, I focus on women over 40 because I find that women 40, 50, 60, even 70 years old are not stopping anytime soon, but they are running away from the camera. And I really try and bring them, they need to be in front of the camera, own who they are today, own their body, own their shape, their age, their wrinkles, their gray hair, own it. And move forward, because more importantly, it's the message and the work that they do that needs to get out into the world.
Do you find that sometimes when you're going into this space with them, and you're the person, you're kind of like the Houdini in some ways, you're trying to like draw it out, you're trying to pull it out because you're seeing it from your perspective, that you're helping women to think beyond where they are right now and help them to actually, in their way, develop that vision of themselves as the CEO, as whatever it is that they're, striving to accomplish. Maybe they haven't even thought about it yet in that kind of way.
Yeah. And let's not even talk about clothing. That's a whole nother subject. But even if they, I walk in the studio, we've already met on Zoom before, and we go through all that. But I really say it's almost like an improv class. Show me what it looks like to be this powerful woman you talk about. Show me what it looks like to stand in the front of a boardroom. And this is how I get my clients to pose and bring and dig deep. So I call it like role playing. Role play this person, this energy that you are trying to show me. And not everything has to be powerful leadership. I work with a lot of coaches and therapists. Maybe it's empathetic. What does that look like to be empathetic, to be a good listener? So, but it is, I call it like role playing. You are physically stepping into this being of what you want people to think and know about you.
Alyssa, I love your work, and I've actually seen you in action. And I think for me, what's really most memorable, and you're right, is for me, what I remember is not the makeup, it's not the hair, it's not the outfit, but it's the confidence that women develop during their sessions with you, where you can visually see the transformation from point A, from starting point to point B. and the life that comes from women, and this is going to sound cliche, but really stepping into their power and visualizing what that looks like for themselves. I want to ask you, so it's interesting to hear you say, the work that you do with women from, 40 through 70 and 80. And there's so little yet even today in 2020 for how women of a certain age, women over the age of 40, are presented in the media. And I think that is changing. But when you look still at fashion magazines, whether the old fashioned flip the paper or, in the digital version, the way in which women are in art represented in advertising, the way in which women are in art represented in Hollywood, like we still have a lot of work to go, right? And so I can understand why there's a hesitancy. And look, I know Risa's natural in front of the camera. I love being in front of the camera. Alyssa, I know that you love being a part of the visual process as well. But for a lot of women, there is a lot of anxiety and apprehension about being in front of a camera. And I think that to a large extent, we've socialized each other and live in a patriarchal world. So how could there not be some sort of apprehension about being in front of a camera at a certain age?
I think that what I always tell my clients, it always seems to resonate with them. This isn't about you. Your photo, for what I do, I'm not doing beauty portraits, I'm doing marketing portraits. When I say to them, this is about the work that you do and getting your work and connecting to your out and connecting to your audience, all of a sudden they relax and they can breathe. And they're like, oh, right. This isn't about that. And I always say to you, no one is going to care if your left eye is squintier than your right eye. And no one really cares if you have that extra wrinkle. And I know that listen, I don't like to look at pictures of myself either. Are also critical, but you have to bridge that you have to cross over that bridge and realize people are not going to hire me if a hair is out of place or my eyelash is wrong. But what I always say is they are not going to hire if you don't look happy. You have to look happy. And confidence, one thing, but you have to look that you are happy with yourself for people to want to get to know you. Because if you look miserable, who's going to want to befriend you? So, it is about also using the whole body from your feet to the top of your head to really engage. You can't just sit on a stool and take a picture of someone and expect them to get this energy. I use the whole instrument of the body, even just to take a headshot.
Alyssa, when you were talking about that women need to kind of connect with this vision of themselves, that one is the visualization. And the other, that even though you're framing it in this way, which I think is really incredibly clever and beyond clever, it's from your years of experience of doing this. It didn't come to this in 1 second.
No.
It didn't come to, you didn't come to this in a moment. But that people, what the trick here, which is, and the trick here in the best possible way, is that you can't connect with, that even if you're connecting with this vision, that it's what's connecting inside of you. So even though you're talking about it like down the road and where you want to be, that someone has to really find it in themselves at that moment to even visualize that themselves in 5 years from now or whatever that may be. And I think that's so incredible. That you frame it in a way that people can really connect with. And the other thing, Jen, you mentioned something about being a natural on this. Well, by the way, when we started, I'd never done this. There was nothing that felt natural about this, and so that, and I'd love you to speak on this also, Alyssa, that even if you don't start off feeling like, oh, this is my space, I'm really just like, my shoes belong here. So what? That's not the requirement. As long as you show up, the rest, and you stay with it, the rest can happen. So could you talk on that some more?
I could definitely talk on it. I think that, I'll start with intention, right? I think the number one mistake people make when they get onto a video call is not declaring what their intention is. Sometimes it's just to listen to content. Sometimes it's to meet people. Sometimes it's to build relationships and get a job, whatever your thing is. But if you're just signing on to this portal and sitting in the dark and lifting up the top and, hey, I'm here, it's not enough, right? So you really like, I have to know my intention on different calls is different things. Sometimes I'm just a listener in the background, but other times I want people to see me and connect. And I think really understanding your purpose and intention of being on the Zoom or the Skype or whatever it is the number one thing. And for me, it's about, I never feel like, to me, I feel like we're sitting in the same room. And I think it's important. Your energy is really important. I always do this. Like, I want you to feel like you and I are in this room together. And if I'm sitting back way over here hanging out, that's not going to happen, right? Because my energy is now back here, and it's really understanding how the camera works and filling this frame. So I think it's about filling the frame, and I think it's about, again, and everything to what I do through the camera is energy. I want to sense your energy, and I think people are making the mistake of sitting in the dark, not sitting up straight, and not taking up space. And I think people need to take up space.
Alyssa, you do a lot of workshops, and
Yes.
one of the things that I find so valuable about the work you do in this new digital world in which we all live in this little rectangle is that, look, like Risa, I'm seeing into your living room, Alyssa, I'm seeing into yours, you're seeing into mine. Like, we're all a bit more intimate with each other, even though we're on the flat screen, because we're peering into each other's worlds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the importance of what you have around you and what messages that conveys. And are those moments and times where there is different opportunities to think through how you want to present and portray yourself based upon, to your point, what your intention is?
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. Whenever I get on a Zoom, everyone's like, oh my God, you're so organized. I'm like, I'm not really organized, but you think I'm organized because the structure behind me says organization. So it's really, that's a great segue into what are people thinking about you. And I can give you a few examples of, I have a woman who is a therapist, and we did a virtual session together, and she was like to check out her lighting and her setup. And she was sitting outside on her balcony, like this in the spring, summer. And she's like, what do you think of my setup? And I said, you know what? I see the city reflecting in your glass behind you. And if I'm your patient and I'm having anxiety of COVID living in New York City, the last thing I want to see is that reflection. So you have to think about what it's like for the person you're talking to, right? Because this is your new waiting room. I have another example where I was working with a man who's a financial advisor, and we're showing me his home office, and he had a stack of papers on his desk that were really disorganized and messy. And I'm sitting here as his fake client thinking, whoa, are those my finances that he's treating like that? And so also I could see into another room, which again, finances is something very private and personal. Is he telling his wife about my finances? And so I studied art history, and we would study paintings for weeks and weeks and weeks, whether the hand was up or the hand was down, or you could see the window. It's called Arnolfini Wedding. And I was like, why are we studying this painting for so long? But I use that work now in my work. What is the story that you are telling me? Are you organized? Are you clean? Are you, whatever it is, you have to think about it from not only what you want here, what is the experience for the person on the other side of the camera? So I hope that helps.
I just noticed that Jan and I are both talking of really, of that's really what it's about, and being able to connect with who you are in a true and authentic way, because that's the only way it's going to come through on the camera, right?
And it doesn't have to be complicated. I'd rather have a plain white background that says nothing negative than dirty laundry, a messy kitchen, a dirty room. You know what I'm saying?
Alyssa, which actually leads me to my next question. So, so many of us, are really thinking about how to reimagine our personal brands during this time period. And so many women are networking, and the networking now, the new normal is the digital opportunity to be in the Zoom room. I'm wondering, your thoughts on being on screen versus being off screen. And if you're having a day where you don't want to necessarily be seen by others, is it still valuable and important to be there if your video and audio aren't on?
Yes, let me tell you, every single person should have their headshot in their profile of their accounts, whether it's Zoom or Skype or whatever. And there are plenty of times where I'll attend something where I really want to listen to the content, but I don't want to be, it's exhausting to know that the camera's on you, even if you're not talking. So if I go to a meeting and someone's doing let's say there's a 10-minute presentation during the networking meeting, that 10 minutes, I will put up my picture and I will sit back here and relax my back and have a cup of coffee and just listen to the content. When the content is over, I take down my picture and I show up again. I did it the other day. I did a museum tour of something. Why does my camera need to be on me as I'm learning about the art? There's no value in my camera being on. Everyone left their cameras on. I put my picture up. I laid down on the sofa and I took a nap during the thing. But I relaxed. And then when it was over and the discussion was on, I turned my camera on and I can participate. But I think it is exhausting, even if you're on a Zoom all day and not participating, knowing the energy of knowing you're being seen and kind of judged for whatever is exhausting. And so I do believe but to your point, Jan, I know maybe where you're going. I do a thing in my webinar where I show a screenshot of a Zoom I was on, and 1, 2, 3 people had their videos on. One person had their headshot on, and the rest of the, I guess 9, whatever, the squares, 12, had black squares with only their name. And I throw it on and I take it down and I ask people in my webinar, put in the chat, how many people were on this call? And they all say 3 or 4, because if people don't see your picture, you're not there.
That's a great tip. Any tips about, because we're, here we're on video. I mean, not right now, this is our show. So we're just so excited and thrilled and so happy to be spending this time with you. But what could you tell us or help us think about in terms of resting face when we're not speaking and we're just in that resting face?
I don't know. My husband makes fun of my resting face, so I don't know. I think it's about not looking bored and unhappy, right? So you always want to keep this little attentive smile, but not smiling when you're not talking. But I think if you're looking bored or you're looking at your phone, it's distracting. So it's about quietly, it's like if you were sitting on if you were sitting in the audience and saw someone else on stage, you know what I mean? Like you're in the background, you just kind of want to politely pay attention.
That's such a good question, Risa, and thank you, Alyssa, for your answer, because when you asked the question, Risa, I immediately went to resting bitch face, right? Because
that's what you said you were.
And I think that there's one thing, if there's just one, or I'm sure a few different things that we've all taken away from life on Zoom, is that, wow, I do really look like that. But Alyssa, you brought up an interesting point around, like the feeling of being judged, and then of course judging others, right? Which is also a big part of, I think, what we're all trying to get used to, just in the sense of how do we create safe spaces for women to show up. And I purposely today knew that I was going to be on air with you. And in my mind, I kept thinking, do not wear black, do not wear black, do not wear black. Because Alyssa, you always say, don't wear black. But I think it's interesting that how, we're all trying to learn something new and different together, right? This was new for all of us in the beginning. And now we're becoming semi-pros at it. But I think that there's also a space now for women to really think about how we support each other differently. And given the fact that we're all going through this in very different ways, and there are ebbs and flows, and some days are great, some days really suck, and some days are just kind of there. Have you seen through the work that you do, Alyssa, and the workshops that you host, are women starting to think about supporting each other differently in the sense of how we show up for each other?
I think so. I mean, I have to say there is this thing that went on LinkedIn where this woman did a headshot of her, showed her old headshot and a new selfie that she took of herself. And I don't know, my thing on that is like, I don't agree with her as, I don't think your new, I think you should show it's really respect, right? So I just did a headshot of a client who I did the before and the after. So her before was a few years ago when she was just transitioning out of her job, and her new one, she's a coach. And so she was wearing like a pretty dress like you're wearing, like black dress with flowers and a leather jacket. And that's who she is today. But she still showed up looking professional. And it doesn't mean, and in all my presentations, I do not talk about hair and makeup, except to say, just show up as you would. Like, it's not a makeup tutorial, and I don't think people have to be made up, and I don't think you have to have your hair done. To me, it's not about that. It's about showing up with respect for yourself and respect for who you're meeting on the other side of this. And so I do think we have to be gentle and not judge each other. But I don't know if I'm really answering your question. And I do think we need to support each other, but I think we still need to show up. And it's not about being pretty. To me, it's about showing up trustworthy, showing up credible, showing up with energy, and connecting. It's not about whose hair is done, whose makeup is done. But to me, it's about seeing you and connecting. And so, I mean, if I had to give my number one tip is lighting, because if I can't see your face, I can't trust you. And it comes down to trust, because if you're sitting in the dark, I can't see your eyes. So, and I think that's just a really, really important, it's my number one tip, if nothing else, have good lighting, because I need to trust.
And especially, yeah, that's fantastic. That's really fantastic advice, especially now, because as we leave our homes and we're outside, really all we've got is from here up.
Yeah.
All we've got are, that eye contact or not eye contact, and how sensitized we've become to looking into people's eyes and trying to figure out and experience what's there. And one of the things that we know about the eyes is there's some sort of song about the eyes don't lie, right? That the eyes, what you're expressing with your eyes, needs to come from the inside out.
Mm-hmm. It all has to come from the inside out. I mean, all the work that I do, it's not about the external. It is always about the internal. Who are you? How do you feel? And if you can't bring it from the inside out, you can't connect. You can't connect.
Alyssa, I want to go back to something you said in the early part of our conversation around, paying respect to the past about who you are and what you enjoy and what brings you to life, but then also keeping your eyes on the future in the sense of who do you want to be, right? Like what ultimate persona do you want to project? And so I would imagine that in some instances, there's a fake it till you make it sort of, embodiment happening. And I'm wondering, in the work that you've done with the woman you've shot, are there stories of transformation that have come from working with you in the sense of, stepping into your power, stepping into your life, stepping into your goals on stage with you while you're shooting them? Do you actually then hear back from them that, the success that experience brought to them, that they then continue to really put forward that energy in their worlds out there as well?
Yeah, well, I actually want to go back to something Dr. Ryger said earlier, which was that inventory list of things that you've done in your past. And like you remembered this thing, when I talk to my clients and we're getting a sense of where they're going, I have to figure out, I don't know them. So they have to tell me about their past. And it's amazing how they downplay, as we as women, downplay all our accomplishments. And so I remember saying to this one woman, wait, I hear that you were a superstar, manager that did all this stuff. And she's like, oh yeah, I did. It's easy for us, right? It's easy for us when after we've done it, it's easy. So it's exactly what you were saying before. Like, wow, I did this amazing thing for these moms. Let me remember that. Let me take credit for that. Let me own it and bring it forward. But I have some clients who tell me I used the picture that you took of me and I put it on my vision board. When someone said that to me, I already took the picture, you already were this person, but they're still becoming, because I pushed them forward to know that is still who they want to be and put it on their vision board for their future. To me, that was so profound. But I have another client who's like, oh my God, I never knew that I was beautiful. She had never looked at herself. I know, she's like, I cried when I saw these pictures, and you made me, and I see for the first time that I am beautiful. These are the situations. I have people who like redo their whole wardrobes because they're like, wait, why was I covering up? Why wasn't I showing? Why wasn't I feeling more feminine? So there's so many transformations, and I always try and talk about the transformation, never from hair and makeup to hair, before. And that's not my before and afters. When I show a before and after, it's how are you, what was your old headshot? Who were you then? What are the words you would describe that person? And now who are you today? It's not the outside. It's always the inside.
Alyssa, what are your thoughts piggybacking on that, on photoshopping?
When I first started my business 7 years ago and discovered Photoshop, I remember talking to my mom once, and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm still Photoshopping these photos from 3 months ago. My mother's like, what? I was very heavy handed. I was like, ooh, skin filters. Woo, I'm going to get rid of everything. I look back at those photos and kind of cringe. I really honestly will more highlight with a highlighter and more they call it dodge and burn instead of erase your wrinkles. But if you just like the same thing as makeup, if you highlight under your eyes, the darkness goes away and the wrinkles don't go away. But I will maybe smooth a wrinkle here or there, but more it's about whitening teeth, brightening eyes, getting rid of fly hairs, and changing, maybe highlighting your T-zone versus so it's more highlighting than it is erasing. Because I think we all know how old someone generally is. What is the point of faking that? Own it.
Well, there's nothing worse than I think seeing a headshot that makes you look 20 years younger, because ultimately people are going to see you in real life and think, wow, you're not that person.
But I will say, I think so many of my clients look so much younger because the energy. I make them move their hips. I make them dance, and I make them get the blood flowing. And when the blood flows to your face, you look ageless. And that is really the truth. And so I think that, yes, my clients look, and they also had their hair and makeup done professionally, but it's really the flow of energy. And I could sit here and I can be, I always use the example, you can have the most beautiful person in the world. If she's not smiling, she's not beautiful.
I just want to go back with the possibility of an edit pencil for a moment, and I want to go back to the expression that's used so frequently. And Jan, thanks so much for bringing it up. The idea of fake it till you make it, right? And that so with that wording is the idea that we're really just faking it. And the edits that I would like to introduce for people to consider isn't that it's not about faking it, but it's about growing into learning more, that you're not faking being you. You're not faking to what you've done. You're not faking your experience. There may be more you need to learn, but you can't fake who you are at the moment, and that you have a lot that you're bringing to the moment. You may need to grow more, you may need to learn more, but you're not faking who you are. And
I had someone said once, and I resonated to me, was like, hone it till you own it. You're still right. So
Yes.
I agree with you on the faking. It isn't about, it is a bad terminology because we get in the feel that it's not real, right? It is real, but you can keep working on it. So keep honing it until you really own it, which means you're just evolving and working on it.
I'll take that edit every day and Sunday.
Good. It's all yours.
Thank you.
Alyssa, what other tips have we not talked about yet that you'd like to share with our viewers today that you think are important for us to know in this new digital crazy world?
I think more than anything is to realize that come with the energy that you are really there together. Because if you automatically come with the energy that this is just my laptop and I'm not there, and you go like this, and again, you go back like this, and you kind of hang out like this, and you're sitting on a conversation, how do I show up? I'm sitting in the same chair. I didn't move, but it's really, I will say the pillow. The pillow is super, super, super important because it pushes you forward and helps you on your lower back sit up straighter. So if I didn't have the pillow and I'd sit in my chair, I'd be way back here, right? So it is I think, it is understanding how the camera works. The camera is going to see whatever, if my hands are on the same plane and this hand goes back here, look how little this hand gets. So if your energy is back here, you're going to appear little. This is your presence. And just fill up this screen.
Alyssa, how has your work changed from COVID? Are you still meeting people in person? And talk to us a bit about what safe measures you have in place to help ensure that.
Yeah, I've been actually very busy. I think that people have been working on their websites and their marketing, and they're having time now. And yay for me, it's been very busy. So I wear a mask the whole time. Before, where hair and makeup was always included in my package, I really put it as an option to give people the option to feel comfortable getting their hair and makeup done. I would say, I think every client of mine has opted to do it because it is important to be polished when you're already spending the money on the shoe. You might as well do the makeup artist, who I work with all the time. She wears a mask the whole time and a face shield. And then we would sit in the room together the whole time. I'd sit while they're doing hair and makeup. I arrive more towards the end, so we're not all in this space together. And then she leaves, so there's less of us in the room at one time. And that's how we're working.
That sounds very comfortable and really thoughtful. And much to your point is that we're so busy doing and being in our business that to have a moment to kind of take a sidestep to grow our business and do what we need to do to develop our business, and have that be part of who we are as working women, and being strategic about it and thoughtful about how we grow, how we build. This is so wonderful to elevate that.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think, back to the Zooms or I don't want to keep saying Zooms, the virtual meeting, since we're using Skype, is really understanding that this is, even your headshot is your virtual presence, right? So you really look at my definition of virtual presence is making you feel like you're with someone physically when you're really not there with them. So if you have if I just put up my picture and walked away, you would still feel my presence in this meeting if I wasn't one of your guests. So I think that when you have a business card with your picture on it, we have a website with your picture on it, any marketing material, you really make them, the more people see your face, the more they know, like, and trust you. And I always use the example of Facebook. When you run into someone that you haven't seen in 20 years, but you're friends on Facebook, and you're like, oh my God, I feel like I see you every day, like you have that familiarity with them. The more people see your face on your marketing, the more they're going to know, like, and trust you and hire you.
Alyssa, thank you so much. These are great tips. I saw Risa writing some down. I wrote some down too. And this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Risa, should we wrap up?
Let's wrap up first. Alyssa, oh my gosh, I have a bunch of notes, and I will be implementing. And I want to thank you so much for bringing your years of wisdom and experience and commitment to elevating women, and now women of a certain age plus, and really how committed you are to that. That comes through when you're talking about kind of your know, like, and trust. Thank you so much for bringing yours today. And so a couple of takeaways. Oh my gosh, where do we start? One, if there's one, don't ever leave a black spot where you're supposed to be on a Zoom call. Don't ever leave a black spot. Even if you don't want to show up on camera, have your headshot represent you. Have something that shows who you are, so that people, even if they're just seeing you in the little circle and that little circle isn't moving, that you're in there, and they can, get a picture in their minds from the picture in your little circle. And that you need to show up with energy. And don't be afraid of your energy. Connect with it. And while you're connecting with it, and while you're thinking about kind of where the next step is that you want to go, don't think about fake it till you make it. Think about hone it till you own it. Because you've got it, you're working on it, you're owning it. And so those are two of the major takeaways from today. And think big. Think big. It doesn't cost you more to visualize big as it does to visualize small. So if you're going to go and you're going to visualize bigger. Go err on the side of really thinking and believing that you can do it rather than that you can't. Bet on yourself. And so I think that those could be our takeaways from today. And I just want to tell everyone just how thrilled I am that you came and joined us and you're part of the sisterhood and the community today. And please do like the video, leave us a comment underneath it. We would love to hear from you. Come be with us next time. And remember, we always save a seat for you. To save a seat for you, please subscribe to Join Mayshot's YouTube channel. And don't forget to hit the bell to get all notifications of our great content.